Alright then ladies, so here we are with our second video. So we're still in Unit 1, which is number work, but we're now going to start looking at some fractions, decimals, percentages and changing between them. So this video is going to be focusing mostly on that. So the first question we're going to look at is converting 56% to a fraction in its simplest form and a decimal. So remember that when you've got a fraction, a percentages, it just means over 100. So 56% is 56 over 100. But now I need to look to simplify this fraction so I can see that they're both even numbers. So I'm going to divide the numerator and denominator by 2. Half of 56 is 28, half of 100 is 50. But I can see again that this simplifies by dividing by 2 again. So I'm going to keep simplifying it. 28 simplifies to 14 and 50 simplifies to 25. So the numerator is even, it divides by 2, but the denominator now doesn't divide by 2, so I'm going to leave it as 14 over 25. To convert 56% into a decimal, I just need to divide 56 by 100 by moving the decimal places twice. So as a decimal, it's 0.56 because the decimal point has moved 2 spaces. Okay, so if you think about the decimal point moving, and it's got to move 2 spaces because it's dividing by 100. Okay, so now we're looking to convert 3 over 20 into a percentage and a decimal. A few ways you can convert fractions to percentages and decimals. A nice way, if the numbers work, is to convert the denominator of the fraction to 100. And if I look at 3 over 20, then I can see that indeed it does change into 100 quite nicely, because all I need to do is times 20 by 5, and I make the denominator 100. So I need to times the numerator by 5, and that's 15. So 3 over 20 is the same as 15 over 100. So that must be the same as 15%. And 15% must be the same as 0.15 as a decimal, for the same reason we had a moment ago, moving the decimal space twice. If we look at the next fraction, I'm converting 3 over 8 into a percentage and a decimal. And the problem here is that 3 over 8, the 8 doesn't turn into 100 or 10 or 1,000, a multiple of a power of 10 nicely. It converts into 80, it converts into 88 and 96 because they're all in the 8 times table, but 100 isn't. So this isn't going to be a nice question to look at. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to think about doing a division. 3/8 means 3 divided by 8. So we're going to do that as a bus stop division. So if we set the bus stop division up, I am doing 3 divided by 8. And you'll notice I've left myself lots of space because I know this answer is going to be a decimal. So I'm going to put some zeros down, ready for me to use. And now all I'm doing is a bus stop division again. So I'm going how many 8s go into 3? And we know that that's 0. So I carry 3 onto the next 0 and I've got 30. And now I'm looking at how many 8s go into 30. So I go through my 8 times table, 8, 16, 24, 32. 32 is too big, so it can only be 3. And that was 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. There's a remainder of 6. Now I'm thinking about how many 8s go into 60. And I go through my 8 times table again. And I find that 7 8s are 56, and that gives me a remainder of 4. And now I've got how many 8s go into 40? That's 5. So the answer is 0.375. So that's my decimal. And if I think about how to convert a decimal into a percentage going the other way, I'm just moving the decimal space twice again. So moving it twice gets me 37.5%. Okay, so now we're going to start putting all of this work together and think about comparing percentages and fractions. So I want to compare 42% and 3/7. I've got to convert one into the form of the other and then make sure that they're easy to compare. I can convert 42% into a fraction, it's 42 over 100, but then I've got two fractions with different denominators and I've got to then be able to compare them. I think this question, because 7 is an awkward denominator to kind of work with, I think this might be easier to convert this into a percentage. So we're going to use the same method we had before. 3/7 means 3 divided by 7. So we're going to take our bus stop, 3.0 divided by 7. So we'll go through this process again. How many 7s go into 3? That's 0, carry 3. How many 7s go into 30? 7, 14, 21, 28. That's 4, remainder 2. How many 7s go into 20? 7, 14, 21. That's too big, so it's 2. 7, 14, remainder 6. How many 7s go into 60? Well, I know 7 8s are 56, and that's 4 remainder. How many 7s go into 40? I know 7 5s are 35, and that's a remainder of 5. And you can see this will keep going, but I now have enough information to actually answer the question. So I'm just going to put dot, dot, dot. It will carry on. This decimal will eventually recur. It will start repeating a pattern, but we have enough information to work this out because 3/7 is 42.85%. And that's a tiny bit bigger than 42%. So we can write 3/7 is greater than 42%. And we'll use an inequality symbol to say that just because it's a little bit nicer and a little bit neater. So 3/7 was just a little bit bigger there. Okay, last couple of questions, and these are quite common exam questions, are to put fractions or a mixture of fractions and decimals into order of size. So here we've got a question where they're all fractions. When you've got 4 fractions and you want to put them all in order of size, you want to make them all the same denominator. So we're going to use equivalent fractions to get these fractions all as the same denominator, and we're looking for a common multiple of 5, 4, 20 and 10. And that means I'm going to make them all a denominator of 20. So I've got 3/5 and I'm making it over 20. That means I've times it by 4. So do the same to the numerator, I get 12 over 20. So 3/4, I'm making it over 20. That means I've times it by 5. So do the same to the numerator, that's 15 over 20. 11 over 20 doesn't need to change. And 7 over 10, to get it over 20, means I've times it by 2. So that's 14 over 20. Now it's asking for ascending order. That means smallest to biggest. So if we think about what our smallest fraction is, that's 11 over 20. Then our next smallest fraction is 12 over 20. But you must always give the original numbers. You can't give 12 over 20. You must say 3 over 5. Then the next one is 14 over 20. That was 7/10. And then 3/4 is our largest fraction. You could have answered this question in other ways. For example, you could have converted them all to decimals using the divisions that we were just looking at, or the methods for converting to decimals, and then put them in order comparing the decimals. That would have worked as well. It's useful to have a variety of different methods to help you, because some questions will be easier by changing denominators, some questions will be easier by making them all into decimals. So if we look at this question, for example, this question is a mixture of fractions, decimals and percentages. This is a case where it will be easier to convert them all into decimals. So I've got 3/5. Now, I can convert this into a decimal by doing a bus stop division. I can do 3.000 divided by 5. But if you look, if I times the top and bottom by 10, I get 30 over 50. And then if I times the top and bottom by 2 again, I get 60 over 100. So that is 60%, which is 0.6. Okay, I've also got 52%, which is 0.52, and I've got 0.61, which is already a decimal, and then the final one to do is 7/10. So we've got the fraction 7 over 10, and I want to convert it into a decimal or a percentage, so I want to make the denominator 100. Well, that's nice and easy. So I'm going to times the numerator and denominator by 10. So I've got 70 over 100. That's 70%, which is 0.7. So now let's highlight some of these answers, make it easy to see. I've got 0.6, 0.52, 0.61, and 0.7. So we should now be able to put them in order of size. So 0.52 is my smallest, that was 52%. Still writing in a highlighter. Let's change that. I think like that. So that's 52%. The next smallest was 0.6. That is smaller than 0.61 because it's 0.60. So that's 3/5. Then I've got 0.61, and then I've got 0.7. Okay? All right, so here are 6 questions for you to practice. Remember, pause the video, give yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, go through them. You should be able to do these now based on the work that you've just seen. And in a few seconds, I will move the video onto the answer slide so that you can check your answers and make sure you've got them right. Remember, if you've got any questions, if anything hasn't worked out the way you thought, then please come up and ask in your own time, lunchtime, after school, or even during lesson if it's very quick. Okay, so here are the answers. Hope that you've got them right. Hope the video has been useful to you, ladies. Good luck with your revision. We'll do another video tomorrow. Got another couple of videos on Unit 1, and then we should be able to move on to Unit 2. I want to make sure that we're covering absolutely everything in as much detail as possible. Excellent. Well done.